In this video, we're going to start going over how to insert doors and windows into our project. We're going to work on the exterior and then move to the interior walls. But for this video, we're going to show how to insert and create these door and window families. So in our Revit project that we've started, we have our layout dimensions. We can actually, let's just duplicate our level 1 floor plan so we can keep level 1 the same. And we can duplicate it without detailing. So you have two options when duplicating a plan. You can either duplicate with detailing, or duplicate as a dependent. If you duplicate as a dependent, it creates a subcategory under your floor plan, and it allows you to use one overall floor plan to do your layout. Let's say if you have a really large building, you could do half a floor plan here and still have your overall floor plan. And if I make any changes, so if I pull this dimension out here, it will affect your dependent plan. In this case, we don't have this other side because we cut it off, and so we can duplicate as a dependent again. So you could say dependent 1. Let's see, we'll modify this. We'll say this is the east side. And we'll call this west side. And so on the east side, we could make changes. Maybe we want to add another string in our overall plan. And it will show up in our east plan because it's basically creating a viewport, as many viewports as we want of this overall plan. So you could have two different plans that are referencing a main plan. So if you have a large building, or if you wanted to show a plan at a larger scale, you could have this enlarged plan, this overall plan. So if we change it to, like, if we wanted to have our plans at a 1/2 inch equals a foot, which doesn't necessarily fit on a sheet well at that sheet size, then we could split the plan in two. But for most residential, we won't need to do that, so I'm just going to delete that. But we duplicated this level 1 copy without detailing. So basically we did duplicate without detailing, so just duplicate. Duplicate with detailing would take all the dimensions or any annotations we put in the plan and keep it the same. So duplicate with detailing would keep the dimensions. Just duplicate will just duplicate the plan and not have all of the information contained in it. So I duplicated without detailing because these overall dimensions that I have, I just wanted to kind of lay out so that it's close to what our reference floor plan is, but I'm typically not going to dimension to faces of finish. When I do my actual plan on my copy, I'm going to dimension to face of stud, because that's where the contractor will want to lay out. So before we get started, let's do something else here too. Most projects, particularly bigger projects, our sample project doesn't have, and a lot of small residential don't have them, but most projects you'll run into will have grids. So on the Architects tab up at the top, they have grids, and I believe the structural also has grids. So you'd place a grid by clicking the grid button. You'd pick the first part where you want the grid to line up with, and then move upwards, and we'll place some grids on this plan. So once you place it, you can move it, and then if you hit AL for a line up here at the Modify tab, you can align it to whatever face that you want. So I'm going to align it to the face of stud, and I'm just going to get some basic grids in here so that we can kind of have what you will normally see in the construction field. So I'm going to have so I don't think there's any hard and fast rule about grids, but typically the ones that go across the top are numbered grids, and the ones along the side are letter grids. And I don't think it necessarily matters. I've seen it done both ways. There's lots of different ways to do grids, but that's how we'll do it in this video and for this project. As long as you have grids on your plan, I think that should be fine. And as you can copy these grids, or you can place another grid. And as you saw before, it's smart enough to know what the last grid was placed. So if I place another grid along this column, it's going to automatically call it B. And then also what it does is you can see the little lock that pops up. It's now locked it into this grid, so that if you move the grids, it'll move together. And then you can stretch the grids out, and if they line up and you see that little blue line, then you see that they'll automatically lock. And I'm just going to place the grids at the face of stud locations. So once you get grids in here, you can just copy them and place them. And typically what I do is I prefer to have grid bubbles on both sides. So if you edit the grid type, either edit type or use the shortcut command, I am going to say that they have the grid bubble on both ends. So check both of these boxes, and then the grids will have the grid bubble on both sides. So I'll go ahead and place grids across the top. I'll copy this grid. If you wanted to copy, so I hit CC for copy, or CO, I think is copy as well. Let's see if you go into your, so see there's two commands for it, CC and CO. I think CO is actually the default. So copy these. You can actually hit multiple as well, so that you can stay in the command and not have to keep exiting or keep entering the command. It'll stay in the command until you hit escape. So we'll get our grids across the building here. It's a pretty easy floor plan, so it's not many grids. As you can see, it picked up this D and started E, F, and G, but we'll change those to 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to crop this view as well while we're here. You can see the outlines of my deck, which I have yet to make yet, and so we'll want to crop the view out further than the deck is going to be. So I'm going to stretch these grids out a bit further. Obviously any of this you can revise later. And so what I'm going to do is hit this crop view, crop region, turn those both on. The first one makes it so that the view is dependent on the crop. The second one just makes that region visible or not. And again, all these can be changed in your commands to be a shortcut key. I'm going to drag my elevations closer so they're going to be within the crop. And then I prefer to double click on the crop region or hit an edit boundary, delete it, hit this rectangle up here, and then create a new crop region. Sometimes it's just quicker just to do it manually. Let's see. Yeah, for this purpose we'll leave it a little bit closer, and then hit finish or FE to finish the edit mode. As you can see, the elevation tags disappeared because they're outside of the crop, so you can actually stretch this out further. And I want to point out something. So when we have this crop region, I'm going to make this a 1/4 inch scale as well. Let's see, where are my elevation tags? There we are. Oh, and actually that's another thing to point out. So the elevation tags, so when you select on them, you can see that when we move the tag, it didn't move where the start of the elevation is. So we can move that independently of this, and so that's why it was hidden. So if we move this closer, we'll still have an elevation tag because the actual elevation element is still within the view. And so an easier way, uncheck this crop view, and we can see all of our views because it's no longer cropping everything out. And we can bring our elevation views closer. We can see this one's still out here. Bring that closer, and bring this last one in closer. Now if we recheck the crop view, our elevation marks will still be there. Notice that when we have a crop view on, without a crop view, there's a little open circle at these grids. That's like the origin of where they're at. So if I uncheck this crop view, you can see that the little circular grip is open, because this will actually move the location of the grid. So that's where it's going to move that grid kind of globally. But if we have this checked and the grid is passed, you see how it shows the location there. This smaller grip or little node there allows us to adjust our grids independent of the overall location. So if I uncheck crop view, you see, and it's out here because that's the actual location of the grid that we set, and now we've moved it away from that location. We can set it back, and this gets a little bit funky because we've now moved it away from the location. It's good to get those set first, and we can just undo that until we get that grid back to its origin, and then we'll turn this crop view on. So now we've got this crop view, we can move our views in so it's tighter, and then we can start putting in our doors and windows. So in the architectural tab, we have doors here and windows. Pick the door, just like in any other family that you add. There's going to be a drop down so you can have some preset doors here. But these are all just the single flush doors. You probably would use these for interior. I'm going to load in some new door families. So if you hit load, it'll bring up your English Imperial location on your C drive, and then you just find the family associated with what you want to load. So doors, and we'll click residential, and we'll load in some doors. If you click on it, you can get a preview here, so that you can load in side lights and doors. Down below, it looks like they've got some pretty fancy doors, but we don't have to keep exact doors that they have here, and these can be changed pretty easily later on. So we'll load in our doors. I'm going to use this, let's see, which one did I find before? I think I liked this single entry half arch glass door, and then I'm going to load in the side light that kind of matches it as well. Once you do that, it opens up another dialog box because they have preset sizes in here. You can modify these within the drawings, but they have a text file that actually you can load in some of these ones also right when you load it in the first time. So I'm going to check these 3 foot by 6'8", and actually I don't want this these 6'8" high. I'm going to have my exterior elements be 8 foot, so I'm going to load in these 8 foot ones. And again, all this information you can change later. Since we're loading in 2 families at once, we can actually choose now the doors that we move in, and so I'm going to choose all the 8 foot doors here, or these are all the side lights, the little side windows, which are called side lights, and I'll just load all these 8 foot ones in here just so I can get the ones in there that I can mess around with to start with. So now that they're loaded in, I can go over here and pick the type of door that I want, and I want my entry door to be 3 feet. Some entry doors, it's good to have that double door or a 3'6" door, but I'm not super concerned about that at the moment. I'm just going to throw in my first door so we can start getting content in the model. Once we have content in, it's pretty easy to then modify stuff. Go to your 3D view, you can see that it now placed a door. When you select the door, you can then hit these grips to change the side and the location of the door where it is in the wall. So we want the door open interior. When we get to commercial construction, you'll want all your doors to open towards the exterior because of egress reasons. As people are trying to exit a building in an emergency or in general, I think per code, doors need to open out so that there's no barrier to egress. So, and I also wanted some side lights, and so I'm going to hit DR or get in the door command again. I'm going to use these 15-inch side lights to put next to the door. And you see it put these doors in here. I'm going to go open up my model. I already took some dimensions here. It looks like this door is 26 feet from this corner here. So we can enter this command and put it 26 feet. Now I'm going to take this dimension off once I place it, because this dimension is based off of, actually hold on one second. Another thing to note, if we can grab multiple elements, notice that the dimension doesn't activate like it did when I just grabbed the single door. If you select multiple dimensions and want to use a dimension to move something, up at the top there'll be an activate dimensions, if that's available, that'll allow you to click that button. And now if I select that 26 feet, it'll move all three elements together. So it did. I'm going to kill that dimension because that dimension is taken from the face of finish, and a face of finish is not a good way to dimension exterior, because that dimension could potentially vary as thicknesses of finishes change, but face of stud should remain the same, which is why we put the grids here. Oh, and a separate note, let us, as we go through here, lock our dimensions. So if we select all these dimensions, we're going to want to lock or pen them. So up here at the Modify tab, pen just means that it locks them. Like if you lock the layer in AutoCAD, we can lock all of these, and so now if we try to move them, it shouldn't let us. So I can't move the pinned element. So any element that you want to keep from moving, it's a good idea to pin them, and grids are a good thing to pin. So as we got those in, I am going to now just throw a dimension on here, and let's throw an overall dimension first from grid to grid so we can get an idea of what that dimension is. It's 5 foot 9.5. When we get into dimensioning, so usually the overall dimensions are on this first line, and then all the smaller dimensions are on the second line, and then you would have your window dimensions on the third line, and fourth, and so on. So in this case, dimensions will kind of auto lock into where it thinks that they should be, but you can kind of manually adjust them if you don't like that. And actually, I believe if you enter into the dimensions, there should be some information in here, but we'll go over that later when we're dimensioning the floor plan. I like to dimension as I go along, and actually for my preferences, and I think most ways would be dimension the center line and then dimension then yet again out to the side lights. And then once you get those set up, you can adjust the dimensions separately. So we can take a look at our elevation here, our 3D view, and you can see the doors are in here and the windows. So I'm going to open up a south elevation view just to see also the elevation view that we're looking at. So you can go over here, or you can double click on this to open up an elevation view. And yep, there's some doors and windows. So same process for placing windows. You can select WN for windows, and there's going to be some preloaded windows in here, but we'll go and load some window families. It should bring you to the last place you were in from the family folder, so you can either go back up the folder or just click your shortcut here, and at the bottom there'll be windows. Then you've got quite a few windows that you can choose from. I want most of the windows to be sliding windows, so down here at the bottom I noticed seems like that's the only window that they have that they're at least calling sliding. They've got some windows that open out, but I'm going to choose the sliding window, and then I'll show you a link later where we can actually, most manufacturers have window Revit models that you can download. So like I went to Anderson Windows, and I'll provide this link, and you can go in here and then download their Revit model, their CAD drawing, their details, which is kind of nice. You can click on the PDF and see what PDFs they have, so you can get an idea of what the window will look like. First, let's open up this. I think you can open in a new window. Nope, it's going to want to make me download it, which I don't want to download it now. But you get the idea. You can look at the window. Here you could download this PDF. Let's just do that since that's what it wants me to do. We'll go to families. We'll just create a new folder for doors. Windows. And we'll just save it in here so we can take a look at it real quick. Ooh, I see it's downloading a bunch of let's extract all. We'll keep it in that folder. And we can see here all their different brands of windows, all their different sizes and whatnot. And then you can choose the Revit file that if you like those windows, and then download the Revit file, and then you can use that in your project. So in here we're back to the windows. We'll load this sliding window. They have quite a few sizes. At this point I'm just going to load in some windows for examples. You can load all of them in. We'll just do that so you can see the notification. If you load a bunch of families in at one time, it says you selected family type, many family types to load. Loading types, family types that are not going to be used, takes up additional memory and should be avoided. You want to continue. You're going to go ahead and hit yes. It's a good idea to not load in a lot more than you need, but you can always take them out later. And you can see here, same thing with the doors. You've got these windows, these little grips that you can flip the side. Similar if you do a dynamic block in AutoCAD, you can create these little flip constraints so that you can flip the window. Obviously, if you flip it the wrong way, then it doesn't have all of the trim and stuff on the right side. So make sure you get it aligned in there right. Once you have a window in, then you can just start playing with the size and get one size to what you want. If you have a good idea of what you want, you can start by loading in the correct windows, but for this exercise I'm just showing you how to get them in. Once you have a window in, right now it came default with a 3-foot sill height, which looks about right. So if I were to throw a dimension here, let's turn a crop view on this view. So I'm going to go crop view, region visible. I'm going to bring in my crop view. get it tighter here. I'm going to change the scale to 1/4 inch. Exit out of there. And actually, you know what I'm going to do for this purpose is we don't need to see the foundation and stuff we added before. It's just going to be a straight on elevation view. Take this dimension from here, and then we can kind of get an idea of where that 3-foot dimension is. So this is 3 foot by 5 foot, so it's 3 foot to the sill and then a 5-foot window. So that matches our door, which we have at 8 feet. And again, we can add a dimension string to the center of the door, and it will snap to the center. I mean, it'll snap to some of these other elements if you tab into them often. They'll have like different ways to snap into the jamb. Without going into too much family creation, they usually have little reference planes in the families so that you can easily snap to them into the locations that are typical. So now we've got another window in here. Let's say we wanted to copy this around. We can do that. We wanted it to be equal. Hey there, look at that. Looks pretty equal. You can check by just clicking on the window, activating that dimension, and making sure it's exactly 9'6". And so now you've got some doors and windows. Pretty easy. On this plan, you'll go ahead and start dimensioning everything up. If you have your book, there is kind of some typical dimensioning standards that they have. Let's go ahead and bring up the book real quick. Dimensioning will be, let's see, I think it'll be in chapter 4, the one that our first test is on, and drawings, and I believe they've got a nice little graphic of kind of how to dimension, and we'll use this to dimension our drawings. So they have, here they have the overall dimension, they have the dimensions to the grids, they have the dimensions to these, this would be to the RO, and here they have dimensions to each of the mullions, which you wouldn't really need that because you're going to have that information on your plan, and typically they'll dimension to the center of the window. Let's look at our example floor plan from Veritone Architects, and they're dimensioning to the center of the window, and I think that's the preferred method. Contractor can go out there, snap a bunch of lines, and then they know. Then they'll have to look at the window schedule. So if we open up their window schedule, let's see, where is the window schedule? That will actually tell them the width and the height and everything, the information they need to know there, which is, I think, the preferable way to do that, just to give them the information that they need. It makes your drawings a lot more clear. If you have single dimensions, then they have to go to this window type. So if you're on the floor plan and you're trying to figure out what dimensions to put where, here they don't have the window types called out on the plan, but they do have the door types. So if we were looking at this 106B, you come up here to the door schedule and find out that's a 3 foot by 6 foot 8 door. And again, we'll get into more of that once we start putting our drawings and getting them more laid out, more put together. So I think that'll be it for this lesson. We'll got some doors and windows in here, and go ahead and put in doors and windows on all of your elevations that have them. For me, on my project. Looks like I've got 4 across the front, 2 on the sides. I've got this nice little bay area with a window in it, so I'll have to figure out all of that information. I'll probably change my footing and stuff that we did before because I've got this little bump out. Not a big concern because, as we saw, it's pretty easy to change. And maybe I'll have a little quick video to show me changing this, just in case you guys run into any issues. Often when I'm looking at this little reference plan, I will toggle the windows by hitting Control 2. So I can split vertical with Control 2, and I'll have my elevation or my little 3D rendering, and I'll have my floor plan so I can see them side by side. Alright, so next video we'll go over laying out the interior walls, which should be a pretty easy one.